from day one of my programming experience with Bubble.io means that I learned there was a program meant to help people who aren't programmers get into that kind of thing. So to say that a little differently, I've never been a programmer before. I have no idea, had no idea how to create something like a Facebook, an Airbnb, or something more simple like an Instagram. So I started learning that there's a website, Bubble.io, for people who are novice at setting up applications. And the reason it's so easy to use this website, I started learning, was because of how there's a large menu on the left side of the website to just kind of mix everything together without knowing the technicalities of what a HTML is or what JavaScript stuff is, or I'm still not sure what that stuff is. But what I started understanding was in very mechanical terms. And I'm a mechanical kind of guy. I grew up with a wrench in my hand and underneath the hood of a car. So when one thing screws into another, that's pretty easy to build up. And that's how Bubble.io is. There is input values, and there are workflows, and there are text strings. And when those things are all set up, one leads into another. It's been about a week and a half since I learned what Bubble.io is, and maybe just 4 days ago did I take my first stab at creating an app. So about a week ago is when I was introduced to the possibility of trying something totally new to revamp myself and pick a direction for what I could become. And I never thought of becoming an app developer until a week and a half ago. So about 4 days ago or so, did I get on the Bubble.io and started clicking around to see what the website's about. There's a few interactive lessons on there that I began that. I didn't begin the interactive lessons that night. As a matter of fact, I was shown just a few very simple things in person by my colleague over here to say, hey, if you click this element, you can create an input dynamic, and that'll make an action so that on the screen there's the resulting factor of that. And I started seeing things line up just like in a car. Again, it became a very mechanical process in my mind, but the vernacular of programming was still pretty foreign to me. Like, even trying to describe element now is, I'm just starting to understand it. And then I created my first app that night, 4 days ago. It took me 5 or 6 iterations from my baseline version. And it was something super simple. Literally created a little text input for name of picture and created an input section for the picture. And there's a lot of text string or user story creating that says things along the lines of, when this is happening, then this will happen. It's grammar, but for a very it's very methodological. It's like the addition of things using words. For example, I got a list of what I did today. So, for example, my story 6 is display the like count by the name. And again, I'm still trying to understand how to describe it because it's all like really new to me. And when I started a couple of days ago, I started figuring out what a user story is. Meaning, and a user story is the way that the user or the public is interacting with the application. As in, while I'm sitting over here, how I am uploading or putting something in, or simply just using the bubble.io workspace. So I heard user story like before, but never retained the term because it just didn't apply to my life really. I started hearing about that, and in the name of developing my first app, it was really just so blocky and just really a surly thing because after 6 different versions, I was able to upload a picture and synonymously create a name for it, all under the power of one click. There's 2 pages to that app, and the landing page, simply said like picture, name, input, and then there was a little drag and drop to say, here's the picture. Click that, and it landed on page 2 with the text being right there and the picture being right there. So I started needing or figuring out what kind of app I would like to develop. And it's not an app for like posting pictures like an Instagram or like Facebook. My intention is a little different. My intention is to create an app that people can share their community project ideas together and see if they want to work on them together. So that's a very far vision right now. And the basics of that for the past 3 days have been in creation of something that I call naming app. I called it that because out of its basic necessity to name itself. So that down the road, when people want to name a project, they can vote. They can first add the project name that they would like to create, and then also vote on project names. And over the past 3 days, I've been setting up user stories, and in order to remember all of them and like figure out how everything works, I've been using a WordPress website that's been created for me. And under the header work note, I have now 13 different bulletins with 10 different stories, user stories. The first bulletin being application. Appnaming.bubbleapps.io is where you can find my current project. The second bulletin being user stories are necessary for app quality control. And that second bulletin is really important and one of my founding lessons today. User stories are necessary for app quality control because it helps me identify where I want to go with my project. Today has been my first successful day in creating an app because before today I was running a code. And what running a code means is setting up user stories so that there is some type of performance on the application. And that also means the app wasn't live for people to search on the web. until today, until the beginning of my session today, it was just code within my own system that I could privately view and privately edit. Then I learned that there's a deploy feature on Bubble.io, so I can bring it to life and offer it to the public. When I offered it to the public, I was only at step 2. I just had 2 steps going on today. And I started with story 1. The system is to accept a text string as a name for the user. And to kind of break that down, the system being the code that I was creating is to accept a text string, which the text in this case is a name for the app that the user can type in and hit submit to. So there's 2 things happening in that case. There's a submit button, and then the information that would like to be submitted. The story 2 that I started with today is the system keeps the submitted name on the screen. And that one was changed shortly after I started today. I kind of forget what it was, but to tell you, the system keeps is the newest word choice. And that's super important to use the right terminology. And the right terminology is one where the programmer, the app developer, and the app or Bubble.io can share a language. I'm learning that I've been talking in very big ideas. So because they're such big ideas, the system can't understand what I'm trying to say. For example, I said something along the lines of vote. Like the system has a vote, and that's a very big term apparently within the program. One that takes like a lot of little steps to build up to. So in order to get to this vote idea, I had to reconstruct my step 2, my second story. I'll say it's not a second step per se. It's like this is a thing and this is a thing that are necessary at the same time, instead of it being like a domino effect. Again, I'm learning how to explain all of this, and it's of course it's going to be difficult to explain. I've only been doing this for 4 days, really, and just to continue on with what I've been doing today. I created a third user story, not on my own though. Took a little help. And the help created this user story. Do not append any extra suffix after the submitted text string. So the word to notice there is suffix, and that means the letters like at the end of a word. So yesterday, my latest version of the app it wasn't an app, it was a code. So my latest version of the code had the option to plug in names to like name the app. But at the end of each submission, it would have a tally number or a like count for each submission. For example, I called one Haven app. Another one is like this app. And the name this app, every time I clicked it or liked it, would increase a number. And it would show this app 1, this app 2, this app 4 after 4 clicks. And I was helped to figure out that was pretty confusing, because there's like a changing number at the end of this name, and that's not what you see on, say, like Instagram or some other like Facebook and other big sites. They're separated altogether. So in order to make this a cleaner looking app, I had to figure out how to not do not append any extra suffix. Hey, can you help me with append? What does append mean?
Put in something at the end.
Do not append. Do not connect. Okay, like appendage. Kind of like, okay. So to say and kind of like wrap up what I'm talking about here, I learned that just in my third story that I had to correct the way my code was so that it could be even presented to the public. And after I figured out how to separate the name from how many votes it had, I went from having 3 stories to officially having 9 user stories. 9 usable user stories. 8 usable user stories. And I'm on the 9th one right now. And just going down the list really quick. Stories 4 through 8 are display a heart icon near the name and associate both. And that's where I got rid of the appended suffix so that you can see the name and the number of likes in 2 different spots. Story 5 being keep track the number of times a heart icon is selected. Consider this as the like count. And I couldn't call this the like count right off the bat. That is where I had to do it in steps a little bit because the system, Bubble.io, doesn't understand like count. So I had to figure out how to create how to understand programming language in order for the system to know what like count means to me. Story 6, display the like count by the name. Story 7, give the user a way to delete name. And that was pretty neat because I understood how to at least create a heart. You click the heart, you create a 1 vote for a like. So in case somebody made a silly name, we could then delete the name and just create a little like cross through so that you can just get rid of that. Story 8, and the last story I'll tell you about tonight, is display to the user the app's intention. Consider this text as app mission statement. And that was the simplest thing to do all night because all I had to do was click text input and type in, this app is intended to name itself. And if you accidentally or purposely create a name that you don't like for the app, delete it. So I summed up what the app could do in 2 sentences. And that's where the app is at right now. And if anyone's interested in seeing that version, you can find it at appnaming.bubbleapps.io. It might be changed by the time this video is out. But until then, I'm committing to this kind of thing every day. 5 days a week, I should say, right after work. And I hope I get towards making something really cool. So until then, have a great time. Have a good night. I'm out of here, all right?